Welcome back. President Trump in Beijing this morning. When he landed Air Force One, he was met with celebrations after landing in Beijing just in the last hour. He is set to begin his two-day summit with Xi Jinping tomorrow morning. Discussions will include trade, of course. The president wants China to open up. AI chip sales. China wants more semiconductor chips. Farm goods, as the president wants China to buy agriculture. And China's support of Iran and of Russia. This historic summit happening as several CCP companies have already been sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury for aiding Iran's effort in building up weapons and missile systems. Meanwhile, more than a dozen of top American business leaders are traveling with the president. They were on Air Force One with President Trump, including NVIDIA's Jensen Huang, Apple's Tim Cook, Tesla's Elon Musk, BlackRock's Larry Fink, and many others from the banking and oil industries. Joining me now is Kentucky Congressman James Comer. He's the chairman of the House Oversight Committee. Mr. Chairman, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Your reaction to the president's trip?
Well, I think this is a very important trip. Obviously, it's historic, but we have a lot of problems with China. You and I have talked about this a lot. Maria, you know more about all the abuses and misdeeds that China commits against America every day. They steal our intellectual property. They manipulate their currency. They don't abide by any environmental laws. They're funding our greatest enemy right now, Iran. But having said that, we really need to have a trade agreement, a fair trade agreement with China. We need China to buy more agriculture goods from the United States. We need China to import American energy. And at the same time, I think there are things China can produce cheaper than we can in the United States that would be a good deal for American consumers and help with the affordability issue. So there's so much on the table, and I can't think of a better person to lead the negotiations than President Trump. China has already received the message that the United States is serious with all the tariffs that have been slapped on China. And if I were President Xi, I would worry if this is an unsuccessful summit after 2 days, that China could be faced with even more tariffs from the United States.
Well, I think that's a great point. And it's true. And I've asked President Trump about this many times. How do you go sit knee to knee in front of the leader of the #1 adversary of America? I mean, I know that you're hopeful that the U.S. and China can reach this trade agreement, certainly. But at the same time, we know that China is behind a major hack, cybersecurity hack in the U.S., behind major intellectual property theft in the United States. And who knows if the CCP is behind those people who were arrested, who were trying to bring, chemicals into this country, biolabs, which, of course, sicken our citizens. So I wonder how much of that comes up and how much the president is going to push Xi Jinping on some of those other issues. Because you're right. I mean, President Trump knows who China and Xi Jinping are, and yet he talks about doing deals and being a deal maker. I want to move on to get your take on other things. In fact, 7 House Democrats sent you a letter requesting subpoenas for an investigation into suspicious prediction market trades tied to the Iran conflict. What can you tell us about this?
Well, this is a problem. We've all seen those big trades go through hours before something big happens in Iran. We saw the same thing happen in Venezuela. I think that someone's been identified in the military as being part of the trade with respect to Venezuela. At the end of the day, it's suspicious. So it's something that we're concerned about. I know there are other committees in the House and the Senate that are looking into that as well. So it's something that I would like to know the answer. And if someone's using their knowledge and influence as a government employee or a part of our military or part of the administration to profit from that in a prediction market, then they should be held accountable. I don't know what the law is, but if we need to make a law and change a law with respect to that, we will certainly do it. But at the end of the day, it's very unethical, and it doesn't need to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how that's possible, really. I mean, somebody in our military who may very well have access to sensitive information about whether or not we're going to go into Venezuela, go into Iran, makes a bet on it on prediction markets and makes hundreds of thousands of dollars on it? How is that? How does that happen? I mean, so I'd like you to get more information on it. Where are you in that investigation?
Well, we're starting to request information. That's the process. That's how it begins. We'll request information, and if we have trouble getting it, then a subpoena will follow. My subpoenas hold up in court, so if someone gets a letter from me requesting information or a document, they turn it over 99% of the time, because if they don't, we'll subpoena them and win in court and eventually get the document and make it even harder on them as we move forward with the investigation.
Well,
but these prediction markets are new, Maria, so we're in uncharted territory. No one would have thought about this 2 years ago, someone having knowledge about an upcoming invasion of a country and making an enormous bet on a prediction market.
Well, that's exactly right. We were just talking with Brian Armstrong about these prediction markets, and I know Paul Atkins has been my guest many times, Securities and Exchange Commission chairman, and he's trying to frame regulatory boundaries around these prediction markets right now. I want to get your take on the other investigations you're working on and what's priority, because I know that the FBI reportedly questioned current and former CIA officials as part of the Justice Department's probe into the former CIA director John Brennan. And his role in the Russiagate hoax as he was pushing the Steele dossier. Agents reportedly interviewing roughly a dozen officials involved in drafting the Obama-era assessment, which ended up being part of an official assessment that the FBI presented to President Trump, focused on how the conclusions were reached, whether Brennan misled Congress during his 2023 testimony. Is this something you're working on, Mr. Chairman? What can you tell us?
Yeah, this is something that we've looked at for many years. Jim Jordan and Judiciary's looked at. Devin Nunes, back when he was the Intel chairman, looked at. And we've passed all of our knowledge that we've gained over to Kash Patel. I do believe we're fixing to see some accountability. There's no question under the Biden administration that the federal government was weaponized. Even at the end of the Trump administration, people within his administration were trying to get him beat. And you go back to Obama, the Obama days, and the election, the 2016 election. There has been a coordinated effort among the deep state actors to try to discredit and disrupt President Trump's administration.
That's right.
I think we're getting close to seeing some accountability here.
Well, that would be good. They spied on him before he was president, then they spied on him as a sitting president, which is quite extraordinary. Congressman, as always, we are watching your work. Thanks for being here, sir.
Thank you, Maria.
All right, Mr. Chairman, James Comer. We'll be right back.